Today I'm joined by John Caplan, CEO of Payoneer.
Traditional cross-border finance, and this is tough to say, but actually fails entrepreneurs. There's the rhetoric around stablecoin and the reality around stablecoin. Knowing your agent will be very similar to what knowing your customer used to be like. I think there's some companies that masquerade as being global, but actually aren't.
Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Wrap Up Podcast. Today I'm joined by John Caplan, CEO of Payoneer. John, welcome to the show.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
No problem at all. John, I have to tell this story. Actually, Payoneer was one of the first fintechs, global fintechs that I used like 10 years ago. So I'm originally from Uzbekistan and I was looking for an international payment provider that would onboard me, even though I'm not like based physically in the US or the Europe. And you were one of the first companies that actually onboarded me and sent me a card, to Uzbekistan. That was a great experience. It's been, a long time since that. And I think Payoneer is one of the most misunderstood companies in the market. So what do you guys actually do? If you could just explain in a few words.
So first of all, it is great to talk, and thank you for inviting me. I'm a listener to your content, so it's nice to share with your audience.
Thank you.
And touched that you were have been a Payoneer customer and a card holder. That I hear these stories all the time. I meet customers. We have 2 million customers around the world, and I talk to our customers all the time, and they describe the power of the Payoneer brand and the validation that comes with being trusted as an entrepreneur wherever you are in the globe, right? And I think that's sort of the magic a little bit of what we stand for, is sort of connecting people's ambition to their achievement, right? Like building a platform, building a financial services company that's designed to support entrepreneurship around the globe is really the mission and purpose of Payoneer. So you asked a good question, which is, what do we do? We're a company that's gone through a really tremendous transformation, and we've redefined the company in a very substantial way. And so Payoneer, we're a 22-year-old business, and I think sort of got famous as a company helping marketplace sellers around the world receive their payments from the world's largest marketplaces. So if you're a goods exporter from China or a freelancer in the Philippines, you were, over the last decade, Payoneer was the account that you received your international payments in. When I arrived at Payoneer a couple of years ago, I took a fresh look at the regulatory landscape, our network of bank relationships, and interviewed lots of our customers. And what I discovered was that, in fact, there was a bigger business we could build on top of the extraordinary infrastructure that had been put in place at Payoneer. And that bigger business was actually to evolve to create a financial operating system for global commerce, to really, extend our business from a mass payout and a payouts business to actually empowering millions of businesses to do business across borders for all of their international accounts receivable, but also all of their international accounts payable. And in the palm of your hand to hold your financial operations in a mobile app that is simple, fair, and trusted. And trust is obviously the most important thing. Really build a business designed for you if you were still in Uzbekistan and we're building your business, and we're building your business from there, so you could get paid, so you could invoice people, so you could pay your expenses, so you could hire employees around the world. Really an ally to the world's entrepreneurs. And what we identified as the sort of single pain is traditional cross-border finance. And this is tough to say, but actually fails entrepreneurs. And it particularly fails the entrepreneurs in the highest growth emerging market economies around the world. It's slow, it's expensive, it requires local entities as you expand, and obviously limits people's working capital. So our platform today enables a multi-currency receiving account, global supplier payments, cross-currency fund management, moving between currency A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. capital access without requiring a physical presence. And
Capital access.
I think really removing friction from global trade, is what makes the business we're building super powerful. We just passed $1 billion in revenue, which is,
Congrats.
so the strategy we put in place 4 years ago, we've had 70% revenue growth since we put that in place.
Okay.
It's working. It's really working.
Right.
So that's what we do.
Right. No, congratulations, by the way, on crossing 1 billion annual revenue. This is something I would like to highlight, and I want to actually understand what's behind this growth. So, as you said, the company has been in the market for a while now, 22 years, and you crossed now this huge milestone. So, what was the main, I would say, push? What products pushed this level of growth?
Yeah. So there's two significant decisions we made. The first, we when I arrived at Payoneer, we had 2 million customers or so.
All right.
75% of our customers were unprofitable. And so we first had to transform our offering, our pricing, the value prop, and our internal operations and our expense. So we've done really the Payoneer team sort of end to end has rebuilt the organization and our approach to serving customers. So that's sort of number one. The
All right.
second thing that drove the growth is that our B2B business is now 30% of our revenue. And so I
Okay.
think there's a misstated sort of perception about Payoneer that it's Amazon payouts or Walmart payouts or Etsy payouts. All that is true. And that's
All
sort of
right.
this incredible foundation. But the growth engine of the firm, the thing that's
All
driving
right.
our growth, is our B2B franchise. And we are seeing larger customers, multi-entity customers who are using the Payoneer account to manage millions and tens of millions of dollars of financial activity inside their Payoneer account. So we really are a B2B payments and financial operating system more than we are just an accounts receivable platform.
Right, John, you mentioned you are more than simply just payouts, more than simply just checkout. So where do you actually sit in this stack if you are not like only payouts? Are you infra provider? Are you PSP? Or you mentioned that you guys are building financial operational systems. So what does it mean?
Yeah, so we're yes to all three, in fact, right? So we have best in class infrastructure, which is built over decades, which includes our relationships with global banks and local banks, our
Right.
regulatory framework and our licenses, which create the trust economy around our business, our ability to
Right.
do KYC in 190 countries and territories at a high level, a high quality, so that we can be a trusted actor in the financial system, which is obviously the top priority for us. And then, so we are infrastructure firm, and there are customers, enterprise customers, who come to Payoneer to
Okay.
leverage our global infrastructure, whether that's big travel companies or content creation platforms or others, turn to Payoneer to manage supporting paying a host in parts of the globe that are often difficult to reach. So we're an infrastructure
Yeah.
company. We take that infrastructure, the KYC money movement core capability in the network, and then the primary application that uses it is Payoneer.com, right? It's the application today. But those two things are really separate assets in some ways, right? The infrastructure
Yeah.
is built for our own customers, for ourselves, and then we share it with other customers. The application began as payouts, and now it's extended into, as you talked about, the card, workforce management, intra-network payments, really all the tools an entrepreneur needs in one place to manage their financial operations. All of our customers, you should know, Sam, have a local bank account wherever they live.
Right.
They,
Right.
they have this sort of traditional marble bank, but when you actually talk to them, they use that for their domestic expenses and domestic operations, and they use Payoneer as their international operating account. We look more like sort of what Revolut for Business is trying to be than,
Right.
sort of a standard PSP.
Right. And I really appreciate that you guys are being able to onboard customers from more than 100 countries, because it was a rare case for myself as well. Not that many companies onboard people from Uzbekistan, it's a very rare case, and deliver the cards directly. to the country. From outside, if you look at the companies in your vertical, they don't seem like they fully own the stack. It's rather orchestration. And how much of this stack do you guys own, and where do you rely on third-party providers when doing cross-border transactions and all these financial operations?
Right. So the last mile bank network are third party banks, as you understand.
Yeah,
We just applied with the OCC for our stablecoin bank charter. So we will have,
congrats.
yeah, we're very excited about this. This is a real innovation. So, the infrastructure landscape's evolving, right? And our view is the more of the infrastructure we own, the better. And the people we partner with are best in class. And so that's sort of the approach we've taken, which is to
Yeah,
own the core, because we think that's, renting a platform doesn't create as much shareholder or customer value as building or owning the platform yourself. We've
absolutely.
partnered with Bridge for our stablecoin offering. I imagine we'll talk about stablecoin because
Absolutely.
our last mile plus some of Bridge's capability were enabled us to get in the market very quickly. And we have thousands and thousands of customers who are
Right.
queued up in a wait list to get access to Payoneer stablecoin capabilities. And we're doing that with Bridge so we can go really quickly and learn sort of the use case for cross-border B2B stablecoins.
Right. John, you are, not only you, you've been in this industry for some time now, even before joining Pioneer. And, cross-border seems like a solved issue, but in reality, it's not.
Did you say
What you think
solved?
is, it looks like solved, but it's not actually. What you think is fundamentally broken in cross-border payments?
Oh my goodness. You know, Look, I think there's some companies that masquerade as being global, but actually aren't. So I
Yeah.
think there's some space between people's rhetoric and the reality. That's sort of number
Okay.
one. The second, obviously, is compliance and the discipline required is, we're a public firm. We take those
Yeah.
matters very seriously. And I think there's some others that maybe grow faster than we do, but are, a little closer to the line than I'd feel comfortable being. We are building 100-year company. And when you focus
Right.
on building 100-year company, you don't cut corners to get there. And that's what's sort of the magic of the Payoneer organization is we are, super focused on a use case and a need for a business owner that is entrepreneurial, scaled, doing business globally, and wants a trusted, fair, compliant, well-priced network to participate in. And at the end of the day, we're a two-sided network, right? We have
Yeah.
we've over $11 billion of intra-network payments happening between Payoneer account holders. That's in addition
Right.
to our $87 billion of volume. When you see that, you realize there's a trust economy being established sort of
Of course.
around what Payoneer is building. And so when I think what's not solved, there is a long list of products and services that our customers are asking us for that we have a
Yeah.
pipeline being built to extend that, and when we can build it best, we will. And when we can partner with a third party, we will. For example, we work with Stripe on our checkout franchise, primarily in
Okay.
China. The reason that made sense is they have a great product and we built our own, got to $1 billion in volume with our own product. So we had product
Okay.
market fit. But I challenged the team and said, hey, is ours the best product in the market? And the answer was no. I said, then go partner with the best in the world so we can actually take that product and globalize it with our use case and our customers. And we're doing that very successfully.
I like this approach, if you have something better, why not use it, right? You don't always need to really
Of
spend
course.
money on building something best because, again, you can go and buy it. But you should be sometimes very careful. If you heavily depend on something, then
Of course.
cutting the ties could be quite challenging. So another thing is, what do you think the hardest part in cross-border payments today? Is it liquidity? Is it compliance? Or, after you do the cross-border payments, there is local rails. So what's the biggest and hardest thing now?
Let's talk about the biggest challenges that we are
Let's
addressing,
do it.
right?
Yeah, from your experience, yes.
Yeah, so from our experience, I think the biggest challenge is the business use case is specific based on industry, geography, and sort of age and tenure of the firm and how many employees they have. So you can't really build a one size fits all solution because you end up needing to have bundles of different products for different customer use cases. So what our team has recently done, for example, in Dubai, there's a number of
Okay.
marketing services firms in Dubai that come to Payoneer for our card products and our virtual cards. They start as a card user at Payoneer, and
Okay.
our local team on the ground in Dubai walks in the front door and says, let's talk about how the Payoneer cards can support your needs. Our
Right.
team in Ukraine has a totally different approach because the team in Ukraine walks and visits customers and talks about you're a grain exporter, you need to get paid, you need to hold dollars, euros, USDC, you name it. The value prop there is different for that cohort of customers. Our customers in China who turn to Payoneer to have their Walmart, Mercado Libre, Coupang, Amazon volumes all go into one wallet, turn to us to get help getting distribution on other marketplaces. And so
Right.
the way we've approached this is not sitting in a tech center in San Francisco or in New York or in London, building a single application and sending it to the world. We've built great technology and then have local teams on the ground who are working with the needs of specific customer use cases, and that's driving rapid adoption of the right products for the right business at the right time. I think that's sort of every year in Y Combinator, there's a dozen companies that are going to disintermediate Payoneer. And frequently they'll call me and say, do you have any tips for how I can, compete with you? And I basically try to remind them that it takes a long time to get the licenses. It takes a lot of money to build the bank network and relationships. But more than anything, you got to know your customer and love entrepreneurs and know that no entrepreneur in one part of the world is identical to the needs of somebody else in another part of the globe.
This
No
problem
problem.
things happen. John, actually, I also want to learn more about your stablecoin strategy because I hear everyone says stablecoin fixes cross-border. What actually changed in your flow since you start offering stablecoins? You mentioned that you partnered with Bridge to start offering that. So please tell me.
Yeah, so I think the first there's the rhetoric around stablecoin and the reality around stablecoin are why we've focused on moving so quickly to provide the capability to our customers, right? There is no better platform than Payoneer's to integrate this capability to learn how does a traded asset that is speculation on one side at Coinbase and other places, what does it actually mean when it becomes a part of the sort of day-to-day utility of the entrepreneurs that are powering the global economy? And that's where Payoneer comes in, right? Because our last mile network is unique. Our relationships with the world's largest marketplaces is unique. The multi-currency account that we've put in place is sort of stablecoin before it was fashionable, right? Because we've been offering a multi-currency solution for 20 years. So adding another rail into that wallet just is more flexibility for our Payoneer customers. So they're a tool. They're not the whole business. And I think that's an important thing for people to sort of understand. It's another tool, another rail in the experience. And so when we think about receiving or sending stablecoins, we're thinking about interoperability, compliance, conversion, sort of what is the use case that makes sense. And Sam, I mentioned this a moment ago. 30 days ago or so, we announced our stablecoin that we were going to have this capability in our wallet, and thousands of people, thousands of businesses signed up to get on the wait list to get access to this. And so the first thing that was interesting is it was clear that there's curiosity, there's intrigue, and that's sort of number one. The second is we've onboarded a few new customers that were net new to Payoneer, and then we've also enabled this capability for some of our existing big business customers. And what we're working with them to understand is exactly precisely what's the use case that's most relevant to them. Is it the Argentinian business because of the fluctuating currency that they say that's value to get paid using USDC? Is it the business
Okay.
owner in Vietnam who's sending physical goods to Africa, and it's useful for them to get paid that way because the certainty and speed of the payment makes sense? But the truth is, Sam, it's too soon to tell, right? And I think that's really important. The hype machine and the reality machine
Mm.
are,
Mm.
I think we are not hypers over here or promoters. We're running a real
All right.
business,
All
generating
right.
real profits, $290 million of EBITDA or something. Like we're about delivering profitable growth. Adding the rail
Yeah.
into the stack will enable us to
Okay.
learn just what the true use case is. And so what I've committed to partners around the globe is we're going to share our learning. We're going to open source that so that the world can see the difference between the white paper someone writes and the genuine use case.
Okay.
And Payoneer is a
Okay.
leader here driving the commercial innovation. So we're excited about it. I think it's a big deal, but it's a big deal when an entrepreneur grows their business because of it. It's not a big
Mm.
deal because tech bros are hyping it, and we're focused on real
I
results.
see. I see. Today I read one interesting article. It says stablecoins are really fast, but they're not necessarily cheap, because there is on ramping and off ramping, and there are many other different costs. Do you think stablecoins really reduce the cost, or they just shift it somewhere else? What do you
Well,
think?
I mean, you know it now. If I pay you in USDC and you go to an exchange to convert it and you pay 8%, it's definitely not cheap.
Yeah.
And if you're
No.
if you're speculating on Bitcoin prices and you bought at 1,000 and you sell at 70,000, maybe 8% doesn't
Okay.
matter. But if you're an
Yeah.
entrepreneur and your margins you need to manage, 8% matters a lot. And so our take rate at Payoneer over around the globe on average has 118 basis points or so. So
Okay.
the last mile, the bank network, the trust with the regulators around the world, and our pricing model makes the sort of commercial utility more valuable to the businesses that are running real franchises. But I think price is one, speed is another, treasury management is another, because we're seeing
Okay.
examples where a business has multiple entities around the world and they use the pay. We have $8 billion, Sam, of customer funds
Okay.
are held in
Yeah.
Payoneer accounts
Yeah.
around the world. So our customers frequently use our account in some ways for multinational treasury management.
Okay.
Stablecoin enables us to do that and sort of extend and accelerate the pace of that. And in some ways, we'll be able to reduce costs for treasury management for people. But I don't want to tip off your listeners too much to where we're headed. But the reality is we're hopeful, but we're going to see what the data
Okay.
says, and I'll share it with you when
Yeah,
in
please. You
90
have to
days.
share that with me.
In 90 days, you should put Rob Morgan, who's the CEO of our stablecoin bank, and
All right.
I bring us on together and let's talk about the real life use
Let's do
cases
it.
that we're seeing and how where it's winning and where it may not be winning. So
Absolutely. No, let's do it. Today I also had one discussion on LinkedIn. I speak to different people, and there was one discussion that says now companies are trying to own the rails, not the customer. So do you agree with this statement? So you have to own the rails, not the customer, because rails then convert to the customers.
that sounds a little bit like the person at the restaurant saying their type of cuisine is the best cuisine in the city. Like everybody's talking their book at you, Sam. Like the reality is there's nothing more valuable than owning the rails and the customer. So like
Right.
that's our approach, which is to say we're going to own rails, networks, network effects, and the end customer. And I would add
Okay.
to that in an AI world which is disrupting software businesses, owning the regulated relationships with governments and trusted relationships with banks isn't going to get disintermediated by AI. And so we have the customer and the rails.
Right. And you guys, as you mentioned, work with marketplaces, e-coms, and I would love to get your opinion on agentic commerce and its role in international trade. What do you think? How things are going to evolve in this direction?
Yeah. So one of the things what we're doing with AI is sort of three different work streams. One is are like every other fast-moving, innovative, technology-driven organization. Our team is diving sort of deep into and driving productivity improvements, creativity improvements, value prop improvements inside our own platform organization. The work we're doing is seeing 5x engineer productivity improvements, faster cycle times, better code, better QA. It's really exciting to watch engineers be able to let the machine do some of the work so they can do the high value thinking. So that's sort of number one. The second, we have a broad and global services organization, and we're using internally building agents to help our organization move more quickly to serve our customer needs. And that is really working. So we're 2,500 people around the world. We have the best and brightest work at Payoneer, and now we're giving our great people the sort of adrenaline shot of agents to help them do their jobs better, faster, more effectively. The third, though, is agentic commerce. So let's talk about that. And it's super early. I do think, and our platform team has begun doing some pretty creative work here, knowing your agent will be very similar to what knowing your customer used to be like. And, KYA as opposed to KYB or KYC. And so we're working on some products around KYA, knowing who your agent is, validating agents, because right now, if an agent has your credit card and can buy anything it wants around the globe without limits, there is, this is dangerous, frankly, I think, and irresponsible.
It is dangerous.
Yeah, and so I think our view is, can we take our global KYC and our global money movement capability and enable third parties that are building agents to leverage that network and that capability? And we think that can be significantly TAM expanding, new revenue opportunities, new customer acquisition, and new innovation. And that's the sort of the way you think about a transformation like the one we're doing at Payoneer. We were a marketplace payouts company a decade ago. We've built a $1 billion cross-border financial operating system, and we're working towards an infrastructure and an applications business that enables the world's cross-border commerce to leverage the assets we've assembled. And agentic commerce will be just one of those ways.
I see. John, what do you think Payoneer's unfair advantage against the competitors in the market?
I think there's a number, right? There's there's a few things on this, Sam. I think the buffet is big enough for all of us to eat, And the reason why I say that is, I'm a fan of what some of the other players in the market are doing. I don't copy them. They don't copy us. We're just actually, I'm rooting for everybody, because the better it is for entrepreneurs to do business around the world, the better it is for the global economy and our community.
Absolutely.
So some of our unfair advantages. I think the trust and relationship we have with banks around the world is second to none. I think our regulatory posture is unmatched. I think our $87 billion of trailing 12-month volume, which is going into accounts of business owners in 190 countries and territories, is unmatched. I believe the team we've assembled on the ground in high-growth emerging markets are the best and brightest at building a global payments organization and a financial operating system for entrepreneurs. But at the end of the day, really, what makes Payoneer special is the ecosystem around it, right? It's being trusted by all the different constituencies that we're serving. That's what makes us most successful.
John, share some of your vision. What do you think is going to change in payments in the next 5 years? We see a lot of trends happening, stablecoins, AI, agentic payments, and everything around. So where do you see payments are going in the next 5 years?
Let's see. I think it's pretty fragmented space, right? So I think there will be, we're one of the top 10 global cross-border, or top 5 global cross-border fintech firms. But, our mission is to go from $100 billion in volume to $1 trillion in volume. So I do think, we've bought 4 companies since I've been here. Our business has expanded and grown. We generate significant free cash flow, and we have no debt. and we've $420 million on our balance sheet. So I think you'll see consolidation begin as you see the world's best companies combine to expand their offerings. So that'd be one. I think will happen over the next 5 years. So I think fewer and bigger players. The second is we were talking about it, which is the combination of infrastructure and applications under one roof. The third, I think, is the leveling of the playing field that happens with AI will mean that parts of the globe where innovation generally didn't come from will come from. And so there's people used to think, oh, it's got to be in San Francisco or London or it's not real, right? And it's not, and the rest of the world copies, what happens in those geographies. Based on the entrepreneurs I'm talking to from Latin America, from APAC, from inside of China, across the globe, I think AI democratizes innovation, and in a way that a global regulated financial institution that's already trusted on the ground. In some ways, Sam, you said it yourself at the top of our conversation. That Payoneer card was a trusted brand that stood for ambition and entrepreneurship. Well, there's millions of people around the globe who are building the future companies of the world, and they're choosing Payoneer as their financial operating system. And so I think global innovation and the strength of our franchise sort of line up really nicely together.
Right. No, John, I really appreciate you coming to this show and sharing all these insights. And again, congrats on crossing 1 billion annual revenue. And as I said, I would love to stay in touch and have you and your chief operating officer on the next show to discuss more how stablecoins are developing. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Sam.